pushing into the ground.
Definitely is.
That's going to let you generate ground force. From here, as you continue to rotate, you're going to be pushing through this lead leg here, which is going to then create that upward movement of that left hip joint.
All right, Mike, so let's look at the lead hip and transition. And we're going to talk about the difference between the professional and the amateur of what they do really from the top of the swing all the way down until, let's say, the club shaft is level with the ground. And the difference between what we see with the pro and the am, and then the effect that that has on the amount of speed you can create, and then also the sequencing. Mm-hmm. So a very common error that we do see with the am would be that the lead hip will get very high very early.
Right.
The sort of lead arm is in effect would pin to the body and they hang back. What does the pro do?
So let's go take your setup and take it up to the top and stop for us. First thing we're going to see is this shift left here. Yeah, and it's almost like a little bit of a squatting feel or a pushing into the ground.
Definitely is.
That's going to let you generate ground force. From here, as you continue to rotate, you're going to be pushing through this lead leg here, which is going to then create that upward movement of that left hip joint. Right? Okay, so set up again for us. Up to the top and stop. If you do it early, like you said, so if this hip rises up, one thing that we'll see from the face-on view camera is that it's really hard to get over to this lead side.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're going to see fat, we're going to see thin, we're going to see all kinds of craziness, right? Do you want to throw this on and let's kind of take a look?
Yeah, sure. All right, so we've got this set on, and this is a great little training aid, but essentially we're just going to use this red ball as a reference, correct?
Sure.
So after that's in there, and let's recreate that same motion that we saw with the pro.
Yeah.
What would we see?
So shift, yeah, feeling that pressure really going down into the ground. Now you're going to start to feel that red ball. See how it gets around behind your body there? Okay, so set up again. We'll see the wrong move. Yeah, you're going to see right away that immediately moves upwards, right? Yeah. Up and left, as opposed to kind of that forwards and down move.
Correct. So we'll talk about the effect of this at the moment of impact. Now, I think a lot of players fall in the habit of doing this because they're trying to swing the golf club from the inside. And as they try and swing the club from the inside, with the intention of what their arms are doing, their lead shoulder gets very high, which then drags their lead hip high. They get very blocked out and they don't get forward or down and able to compress the ball or essentially get themselves into the position where they are covering it as such, right? So the pro, from that top of the swing, as they recenter and come back down, they get this flowing motion where the club falls underneath them. But as you can see, this ball itself, it's still very low relative to...
Absolutely. Yeah, it almost, if you do that again there, if I hold this here, you'll see that it doesn't rise up and above. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so it's sinking down. I feel a lot of pressure. And I was just doing some videos with Dennis up there, and he was talking about that sort of transition move of the lead knee kind of shifting out over the flared front foot. There's a lot of pressure underneath the ball of my foot over here, which is then that compressing and lowering of the legs, which as I apply pressure down into the ground forces back and that allows that rotation there.
Exactly, and that's where that red ball started to move up and around at that point.
Yeah, perfect. So let's say that players, everyone's got a couple of alignment sticks lurking around in space, and what you can do is you can simply kind of get these through your belt buckles. Now, what would you say is a great drill or feel for players if they video themselves from face on and they see that their general motion is that this tips up quite high and quite early?
Yeah.
What would you get them to do, just with small, slow swings to start off with, to keep that lead side lower?
Yeah, and even just swings without hitting golf balls at first, right? So once you kind of get into this position, almost just hold, keeping the arms passive and just feeling that kind of shift of the weight, the hips down and left, not even, just leaving the arms kind of suspended, just to get that initial feel in the transition.
Yeah.
Because it is a little bit, can be a little bit overwhelming having this alignment stick here at first. Yeah, shoulder, arms across the chest is great.
Yep.
Perfect.
So as I do that, right, not only is this good for getting the sensation of what the lead hip does, but we can also see the difference between the rotation of the upper versus the lower body.
Exactly.
And as I come into transition, you'll see that there is a bit of a separation between those two.
Exactly. This space here gets a little bit wider.
Perfect. So now I'm feeling all this pressure down on the ball of my lead foot, as I'm shifting down, which would be the complete opposite of this player who's trying to like come from the inside. You can see they match up really quickly.
Yeah, and like you said, you can see that lead knee is behind that lead ankle right there, as opposed to, you know, over the top of it.
Now, one of the most common comments that I get on these videos is, oh, is that the same for driver? Is that the same for iron? Now, within reason, every golf club has a head, a shaft, and a grip. Doesn't matter what it looks like. If we were playing tennis with an incredibly small tennis racket head, then it would be considerably more challenging than a big head.
Sure.
Right? But at the end of the day, it's still the same motion. Right. And in golf, the effect of having the ball forward with driver naturally helps you get this sort of ascending delivery.
Right.
But within reason, you don't want to be pitching your lead hip high like this with driver and just trying to hit up on it, because the body still needs to move in an athletic manner.
For sure,
Yeah.
And that would be somebody that hits perhaps a lot of top shots, might look like that.
Correct. So with this golf club, with this alignment stick through our belt loops, my recommendation here is just to get half an alignment stick, so probably about to this black line, and just use this as a reference of, as you are coming down in transition, just as a feel, make sure you feel like you're reflexing those legs, specifically the lead knee as it gets down there, and then just allowing a little follow through like that.
Yeah.
So I'll go in and I'll hit one. I want you to just have a look at my lead hip. Maybe just talk about some of the observations that you have there when I do this.
There's definitely that down and up look, like you said. The important thing being that the down happens first. You know, while you're shifting, getting pressure over to that lead side.
Yeah.
It's not the opposite of that, which is straight up with that lead hip.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing about this drill is it encourages a low point which is forward. And a low point which we would like to see with golfers approximately about 4 inches in front of the golf ball. If I set up, this white line would be representative of the golf club coming down, striking the ball, the club going down into the ground and then rising again, which would give us our divot. If my lead hip is coming up high, right, that low point is way back over here, isn't it?
Way back there, yeah. So that's where your fat, thin shots are coming from.
Okay, perfect. So just as a little rehearsal, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get the feeling that lead hip, just as a visual as well in my head, from the transition, compressing the legs, lead hip stays low, lots of pressure, and then following through. I really liked what you said about keeping the arms passive, because if I'm trying to do this intentionally and drag the arms down, we'll see that I'm getting stuck and the lead hip's getting high.
Right.
So to the top, recentering, that feels wonderful. Follow through, nice and slow. Now let's hit that with a little halfer.
Great.
Now that just made a different sound, didn't it?
It did. There's a lot more power there, right? Using the ground.
Yeah, perfect.
Really good.
And we see that the low point after the golf ball, 3.8, and that's pretty much exactly what we're looking for.
Happy days.
Cheers.
Nice, mate.